Hey guys, welcome to the first webinar in this new format. So what we're going to be doing is experimenting with breaking up our mentor sessions into group mentor sessions, individual mentor sessions. Then once a week, I'm going to be creating a webinar which is not specifically repeating the course content, but case studies and work and projects that I'm doing in my general work in industry. So really to give you exposure to those real world examples, and as well as including some insight into the assignments, the assignment projects that have been given in the Mobili course. So I've had some inquiries from students about specifically different modules as assignments, how to go about them, some foundational knowledge, some technical guidance in terms of how best to complete their projects. So I'll also be doing examples on assignments briefs that I've given out. And to kick off with, what I'd like to do is have a chat about module 2, which is the data aggregation tool. It's a practical assignment that was issued. And one of the biggest questions that I've had is, well, we need to have data, but where do we get it from? Can we get it ourselves? How do we get the different formats of the data? So that's what I'm going to talk about in this webinar today. So I'm going to just go through step by step and show you examples. I'm going to be looking at data sources on Kaggle. Excuse me. So let me just open that up. Okay. So I'm going to be taking data from Kaggle data sets and then converting it into, let me just open it up again. And then, so I'm extracting the data as a CSV file. This is what I'll be downloading it as, and then I'll be converting it to the other data formats as well that you can use in your projects. So once that's done, let me just, I'm also going to open up an actual Python project that I've done myself, which is based on the assignment that you were given. So let me just open that up as well. All right, so let's just open up this module 2 starter. So just as a background, one of the biggest points that I've made is around arranging and structuring your projects. So in our Python course, and don't worry too much about all these different files, but essentially our main Python file that we use for the main program is our app.py. That's the entry point where that we run our program from. So as we know, the first thing, okay, let me just, okay, so what it's done now is it's opened up in PowerShell, which is the Windows terminal. And I am running a Windows machine, but I do have Linux installed, and I've got Linux installed through the WSL2 system, which is the Windows subsystem for Linux. And it is a much better way to run Linux on a Windows machine compared to how it used to be done. And the way it used to be done and how I had it set up was on a dual boot system. So essentially on the same computer, you would have installed the Windows operating system alongside the Linux operating system. But in order to switch between the two, if I was in Windows, I would have to shut down my computer, restart, and then in the boot menu, then it would give me the option of which operating system I wanted to boot into. So then I would have to restart the computer and boot into Linux. And then if I wanted to go back to Windows, then I'd have to reboot and then go back into Windows. So it worked, but it wasn't really practical. not ideal. So this is a much better way, and I can access it automatically from within my, wherever I am in Windows. I've got access to my, it's an Ubuntu installation, so my Ubuntu WSL, and I prefer to work within a Linux environment from a command line perspective. So you can run it through Windows, but what I'm comfortable with is running it on Linux. So what I've just done there is I've changed it to a Linux command prompt, as you can see. Okay, cool. So where we are now is we are actually in our project. This is my Python project. So essentially, this is the project that I've used as a demonstration of this assignment. Okay, so what I've got here is I've got my main app.py, and you can see that there's not a lot of code in here, which is exactly the point, because I've done it in a modular way. So we've got I've got a separate function which handles all of the imports of the CSV file. Then I've got a function which handles the imports of the XML file. And then I've got a function which handles the imports from the JSON file to get the data. So each of those are defined in my functions.py. And this is part of the course content, but I mean, it's not complete. It's really just a starter, so I can actually delete that. All right. Obviously, for students who haven't done this assignment, I don't want to give you everything. So, but what is important is just remembering, and it's a guideline on how to best structure your application. So what we've got here is I've got a separate functions.py file, and the functions.py file, its only purpose is to define the functions that I'm going to be using in my main application. So the idea of that is that we don't have all of this code inside our main app.py file. And remembering, obviously, this is just a placeholder here, just saying what it will do. But this is where all the Python code will be for each of these functions. So, I mean, maybe each function has got 20 lines of code once this has all been coded out. And it's much easier to debug and to maintain if we've got them separated out. So what I've also got, which is important and which is more relevant to this demonstration, is having a separate data file. So our data file is what contains our actual data in its different formats. So since I've done this demonstration with students in a mentor session before, so we've got here the CSV file, the JSON file, and the Excel file. So I've got a CSV, comma separated values. In this case, it's tab separated. Then we've got our JSON file. And okay, so I did a couple of different demonstrations. So I've got a subdirectory in there, but not to get confused with that. Let's actually just look at this rather. So I started off with a CSV file, which is what I downloaded from the internet. And then I actually converted this to a JSON file. So it's the same data, but just different formats, right? So JSON is JavaScript object notation. So you can see each of these is a separate object, and each object is grouped as a group of properties or values. So the attribute, that's the attribute name, and then that's the value. So it's a key and value setup here, and you note that they're all in the same structure. And then this goes down for all the records. So each of these is a record. If you think about it in Excel, if you're working with an Excel document, this is essentially a record. And then in an Excel document, you would have a range of columns, right? So each column, that would be the column heading, county, city, states, those would be the column headings. And then each row would have an insert of the data under each of those columns. And then, as we know, we can import a CSV directly into an Excel workbook. And then, as again, you can see, so these are the column names, at the top. Sorry, it keeps overlapping. But anyway, at the top, you can see the column names, and then all of these down here, all the rows of actual data assigned to those columns. And then the third one we've got is XML, which is, once again, it's exactly the same data, but it's just in a different format. Okay, so you've got your document header over there, and then the root is the main tag or element that wraps everything. So we can see that that is the main parent element. And then within the parent element, we've got a number of rows. So in the same way that we had each of our JSON rows here in that notation, we've got a row for each here. So it's got the same column names and then the same value and data, but it's just in a different format. Okay. So what I'm going to show you next. Okay, so the next question is, right, well, where do we get the data from? Okay, so you can get data from, there are many different options in terms of where to get data from, but essentially data is, we can get dummy data from multiple sources on the internet. Even if you just go and Google sample data sets, and maybe add in a download there. So you can see there's already quite a few options, right? So we've got find open data sets on Kaggle. So Kaggle, as I've spoken about Kaggle many times to students on the course, is an amazing community to get signed up on as a platform if you are pursuing a career in data science. We are actually going to go into Kaggle to get a data set now, so I'll show you more about that once we get in. But yeah, I mean, Maven Analytics, this is not something I've ever come across, but you can see that there's quite a big repository of data sets for use. So the reason why there are so many data sets available is when we are learning or creating models or doing anything with machine learning where we need to test, we don't necessarily have the real data that's going to be worked with while we are building the model. So the data sets provide that dummy data for us to run through our models and to do testings and to build the framework and program around the data that's actually going to be used, so for testing. A very interesting option to go for is to go on some of the government websites, because that is real and relevant data, right? So there's a huge amount of real data that you can work with on the government websites as well. And yeah, I mean, it's really just an option. Just a question of looking, going through everything and finding exactly what is relevant to the application for your outcome. So I don't have a specific a very specific application. All I want to demonstrate now is getting the initial data set and then creating different versions of that data set. So it doesn't really matter to me what data sets I use. So I'm just going to go to Kaggle, which I already have open here. And within Kaggle, we've got data sets and a whole range of data sets here. So like there's really some interesting stuff. And it's, as you can see here, it's grouped into different categories. So you can search by credit categories. You've got the really popular data sets here. And then, yeah, as you scroll down, so we've got movies and TV shows, clothing, economics. I mean, there's a huge amount of really interesting data here that you can find. And once again, it's like real data as well, which makes it all the more exciting and interesting. Okay, so let's go forward without any further ado and look at let's take this Netflix reviews, okay? So what a Netflix reviews data set could do is, I mean, I guess if you think about a machine learning application, we've heard the one that's very common, which is a recommendation system. and prediction of reviews based on a person's viewing history and their previous likes. So you could do something like that. But for this case, all we're doing is downloading the data set and then doing a conversion. Okay, so on Kaggle, what we need to do is just click into it and then download the data set. It's available here. So we've got a bit more information. So this data set, apologies. I've got someone entering the session here. So this is one of our students, Junior. Hey, Junior, how are you doing? Okay, I'm not hearing Junior. Let me just check that my sound settings are correct. Yeah, okay. Junior, can you hear me? All right, so I'm not hearing anything from Junior, but Junior, just to let you know, the session is being recorded. As you know, today we're doing the webinar session. Yeah, so welcome, and I hope it's of interest to you. All right, good. Okay, so about the data set. So this data set contains information about the reviews given by Netflix users on Google Play Store. Apart from reviews, it contains information about the ratings and reviews. Okay, actually, this is not one that I think there's a better one that we can use. Yeah, this is a bit of a boring one. So my initial impression was it was reviews around content. So there's another data set that I've actually worked with previously, called, it's the Netflix movies and TV shows information and lists. So I think that's a better one to work with. Something a bit more interesting, a bit more relevant, a bit more fun and for us. Okay, so let me just expand that. All right, cool. Okay, so about the data set, it's a Netflix stands as a leading force, realm of media and video streaming, with a staggering array of over 8,000 movies and TV shows accessible on their platform. This is as of mid-2021. All right, so this is now, we're in May 2024. Doesn't matter, data is data, and it is as real now as it was back then. Okay, so the data set overview, it's a comprehensive compilation of movies and TV shows available, covering aspects such as the title type, director, cast, country of production, release year, rating, duration, etc. So here is a list of all the key points, which is, yeah, I mean, it's quite a detailed list of data for each record. So this is something that we can definitely work with. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and download this. This is going to download as a CSV. So if I just click on download, so just make sure that you are registered and logged into Kaggle in order to download that. Okay, so I am going to download this to my desktop, and I am going to call it Netflix. Okay, doesn't matter, just something that makes sense to you. And then we can open that up, and I am just going to extract it separately on a separate screen here. All right, so I downloaded it and I just double clicked on the file, and then what I've got the option to do here is, because it's a zip, it's downloaded as a zip file. So I just click here, extract all, and then I can put that onto my desktop as well, no problem. Okay, so what it's extracting for me is it's taking out the CSV file. All right, so once that is done, I can then open up my Excel, which I'll do shortly. Okay, let's open up Excel. So just to say that we've already got, now that I've downloaded the CSV file, we have the CSV file already. So that is sorted. Okay, so I will open this up in Visual Studio Code, and just to show the different formats, I'm just going to do it in the same folder here. So on my desktop, I'm using TV. All right, so this is our CSV file, and you can see it if it is visible on the screen. Let's see if I can increase the size of it. Yeah, okay. So the CSV file, it's quite a similar icon to an Excel icon, but it's just got that A with a comma next to it. So that's how you can tell it's a CSV file just from looking at the icon. The Excel file, I think, has a little table image on the icon, something like that. Okay, cool. So, and the reason we don't necessarily need it in Excel format for this project, but it's a good way to be able to see the data anyway before we start working with it. So let me just close that. And then if you want to bring a CSV file into an Excel workbook, you create a new blank sheet and then go to the data tab and click on from text CSV. And what will happen is that we will be able to upload that CSV file. Okay. So click on import. And we'll have a preview come up. Great. So what we've got here is a preview and the delimiter. We can see essentially all you want to check here before you go forward is that it is actually structured correctly. So often what might be the difference is that you might have maybe a tab separated file, which is, this is comma separated. So colon. All right, you can see that would be the incorrect. So the only thing here, if you when you first importing it and you see something like this, then you know that it's wrong because you want everything in different rows. So the one option that I'm showing you here is just to change what the delimiter is. So if you change it immediately to comma, then you can see, yes, okay, it is actually comma separated. Another one might be a tab separated file. Yep, not correct. Okay, anyway, so let's go back to comma because we know that's correct. Okay, so once you're happy, just click on load, and that will load the data into your sheet. And there it is. Okay. All right, great. So just to take a look at the structure of this, we can see that it's got a number of columns, and we've got the show ID, the type of show. So is it a movie or is it a TV show? The title of the movie or TV show. It's got information about the director. Obviously, some are missing, right? So we don't have all the information for all the records, which is fine. Then we've got cast, we've got the country where it was produced, the dates added, the release year, what's the rating, duration, and where's it listed in. So I guess that's like the category or genre, and then the show description. Okay, so we've got a couple of extra columns here which we're not using, but that's absolutely fine. We do not need that. In fact, as a data cleaning exercise, what we can actually do is to select all of those and to delete them so that they don't show up in our data. All right, so let's delete that. All right, great. And then just expand that fully. Okay, so here we've got our data set. All right, so we've got our CSV. So just to have it, let's file save as and I just want to save it in that same directory that we have our original CSV in. Okay, so desktop, Netflix and movies. Okay, cool. So this is where I'm going to save it as an Excel workbook, and it's alongside my CSV. So I'm just going to save it there. Okay, let's save the thumbnail. I'm not sure really what that does, but it's fun just to press the button and see what happens, right? Okay, save. All right, so if I open up my directory now and I refresh, okay, this is interesting because what I'm expecting to see here is an Excel sheet, is an Excel document as well. All right, so let's see why that didn't work. Save a copy, let me try that. Okay, it does already seem to be there, so let me just double check. Okay, great. So it is there. All right. So as I was saying before, you can see the difference in icon. So we've got our Excel. Okay, so I guess when I said save thumbnail, so that's what it's actually done here. But you can see the difference in the Excel icon as compared to the CSV. Okay. All right. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do, so we've got our CSV file. We need to scrape data from the HTML, right? So what we need is also this in an HTML format, but I'm going to get to that last. So the next thing I'm looking at now is an XML file. And then after that, we'll look at the JSON file and then come to the HTML. All right. So let's start with how do we convert this now to XML? The way I would generally do it is to use an online converter. The only challenge with this sometimes is the volume of data. So if we open this up, we just go back to it and just see how many rows there are. If I scroll all the way down, I think there's 8,000. Yeah, there's nearly 9,000 rows here. So I've converted data sets specifically just for teaching purposes. And then generally what I do, if it's for teaching purposes, what I just do is I reduce the data set down to about 20 to 50 records just for proving the concept. So just to say that when you are downloading these data sets for use in your projects, for developing projects and for testing, they are very large. I mean, tens of thousands of records often in these data sets. So if you find that you are struggling to work with the volume, especially if your machine isn't high spec, then it's okay to reduce them down. But let's try and see. Let's see if it can handle, let's see if we can find an online or something to convert this to XML that can handle the size of the file. Right. So the file itself is not that big. It's 1 megabyte, but there are many records. So let's see. All right. So we've got our original data set. That's where we are now. What we want to do is to convert that into an XML. Okay. So once again, there are a few different options, and it really just takes a bit of Googling to find something, a tool that works for you. So let's just say online converter. CSV to XML. Great. All right, convert CSV to XML. All right, well, as you can see, once again, there are a lot of different options, So it's just a matter of trying and seeing what works for you as well. Sometimes what we can do as well is we can actually use the built-in we can use the built-in tool from Excel, which is an option as well. There is a slightly different way that the formatting comes out. So let's actually have a look at that. All right. So I think what we will do, let's say save a copy. And then when you do exporting and saving a copy, there's a whole drop down of the different types that you can export to. So like, never mind just the ones that we want. It has many others as well. So it actually does have an XML spreadsheet option here. Let's see what other options it has. All right, so we've got Excel, all it is. You've got CSV format, XML data. So that is the one, the raw data that we would be looking for in this case. Just for interest's sake, I'm just going to go down and see what else. I remember there was an option for the HTML as well. The challenge that I find with exporting directly to HTML is that Microsoft adds a whole lot of their markup onto it, and it's messy in the back end. But it is an option when we get to HTML. But anyway, let's just go through it. Okay, so you can export to different kinds of XML text files. Okay, so there's many different options there. All right, so but our main task right now is to export to XML. All right, so let's click on that. And then just make sure that we are, okay, because just to say that automatically it's trying to save it's always by default into my OneDrive personal documents directory, which I don't want. So because I want it all in that desktop folder. Okay, so I'm going to go to desktop now and to the one that we are working with, and XML data. Great. Okay, let's save that. Oh, interesting. Okay, so it's telling me it cannot save the XML data because the workbook does not contain the mappings. Okay, interesting. Okay, just out of interest, let's go and have a look and see what it says. Okay. Okay, anyway, that looks like a bit of a mission. We don't really need to do that. Okay, so now we know that's what happens, right? So I'm going to go back to my online converter and see if it can cope with the file that we've got. So if it's too big, then I'm going to go back to just reducing it to like 20 to 50 rows. But let's go with the option with choosing the file. So entering the data, I can literally just copy and paste the CSV in here. This is a good option because I can upload the file. So I'm going to choose the file. And the file is in my desktop. And we want the CSV. So remember, it's this one here, the one further down. And just to make that more visible. All right, so this is the one that we want. Okay. All right, generate output. So what we want is just to convert the CSV to XML. Okay. So this, oh wow, it actually did work. Okay. That's interesting. So it looks like it actually coped with that, with those 8,000 rows. What it has done is it's added a whole lot of extra empty fields, which, okay, so it added those empty fields because those extra columns that I deleted, but I only deleted them from that Excel file, right? So let's do a quick data cleaning session here. All right, let me just close this. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going back to this. This is the Excel sheet. And actually what I'm going to do now is to create a new CSV. And this is like kind of like a bit of data cleaning here. But I'm going to create a new CSV from the Excel file, which means that I'm going to right now delete this original CSV file that I downloaded directly from Kaggle. Okay. So let's do that now. Let's delete that. Whoops. Okay, let's delete that. And so now we're back. All we've got now is our Excel workbook. So I'm going to open that up again. And what I'm going to do is just remembering, so we deleted those extra columns on the end, which means that we've just got the data that we need. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce this now to the first 30, let's say the first 30 rows. Okay. And in Excel, for working with data, it's a good idea to just make it visually just easy to work with. So one of the first things that I always do is I'm looking for my freezing. Okay, view and freeze panes, freeze top row. Okay, freezing the top row. It just means that it keeps it in view the whole time when you scroll down, which means that you can see what the data is. If the title bar is not in view, then you can scroll down and you lose track of what actually the types of data are. Okay, so there we've got that done. We've trimmed that. So let's now take the first, let's take the first 30 rows, and then we can just, I'm just pressing Control C and onto a new sheet, and then Control V, right? Okay. So now we've got the first 30 rows, and it goes up to S29. Why? Because the first row is the title row, so it starts from 2. Okay. So now that we've got, now I'm just going to call this cleaned. So we've got just the data that we want, and we've got the first 30 rows, which is much more manageable to work with when we're building this project. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save as a CSV, and just also once again changing it from that default. So I work with OneDrive because it's a good option for keeping all your files synchronized to the cloud so that you don't have to worry about losing data. I've used this for years now in my workflows. I also, or have been in the past, using Google Drive the most, but I've recently switched over to OneDrive. Just personal preference, neither is better necessarily. Okay, so here I'm back in my desktop folder, Netflix, movies, and TV, and I am going to now save. This is the new cleaned CSV, right? So just to repeat what I did there, my original CSV data I downloaded from Kaggle. That was my data set with 8,000 records, and it had some extra empty columns on. So what I did with that is I imported that into my Excel workbook, which was a blank workbook which I created. In that Excel sheet, I deleted those extra columns, and then I also trimmed the data to the first 30 records. Okay, and that's what we're exporting here as a data set that we can work with. Okay, yes, okay, so all this is saying is that you can't save multiple sheets to a CSV file. Each CSV file just needs to be one data set, so that's fine. I only want to save the sheets anyway. Great, okay. So now we have our new CSV, and we've got our original Excel file. So let's have a go again. And just out of interest, actually, okay, never mind. Let's go to my XML, to my converter. Okay. So I'm going to do this again, but instead of importing the 8,000 records, I'm just going to import our 30 records. Loading. I just want to make sure I've got a fresh view here. but it's not remembering any of the previous data that I uploaded. Okay, great. So now let's, sorry, just waiting for it to finish loading. Great, it's finished loading. All right, so let's go back to choose file and then upload the new cleaned CSV that we created. There it is. And you can see it's much quicker, nothing hangs because it's got a reasonable amount of data to work with. Okay, good. All right, so if we scroll a little bit further down, we can see that this data has been converted quite nicely for us. There we've got our XML document root header, we've got our roots element here, and then we've got each row. And this is really great because it's actually labeled each of the columns nicely. So we've got show ID, type, title, director. We can see what's going on in this data. This data is good. We can definitely work with this, right? So let's scroll down and we can download this. And what I'm assuming it will download into as an XML file. Okay, great. There it is. It's an XML file. And let's put it in our data repository. Great. Cool. Okay, so this is a good point. Actually, let's open this up in our, I'm going to now close this example. So in Visual Studio Code, learn your shortcuts. It's a bit of a learning curve, but it definitely speeds up the process. The end, I'm on a Windows machine, so the shortcut is Control K. And you can see at the bottom there, Control K, it says it was pressed and it's waiting for a second key. So the great thing with Control K as a shortcut is it's a setup for a variety of shortcut functions. So Control K, W, it closes all the open tabs, and then Control K, and then separately F, it closes the project, right? And the project is just a name for it. It's a folder, essentially. All right, so what I want to do now is I want to open up that directory on my Windows desktop. Currently, this is pointing to my WSL operating system. It's not information you need to know, but just to say that I'm going to, I need to close this. Okay, is that a right click? Okay, let's try opening folder. Oh, great. I already am in my Windows environment. So I would have had to disconnect from my WSL. Anyway, let's go to desktop and I want to open up this directory where we've been saving all our data in its different formats. So great. What we've got here on the left, the first is the CSV data. And then we've got the XML data now. Fantastic. And it's only 20 records, which is perfect. It's very manageable. And then we've got the original Excel file, which does not display in here. Okay, what's next? Let's do the JSON. All right, so we've just got a few minutes left of the webinar, so I'm going to wrap up shortly. So let's get the JSON, and then let's get the HTML. And the HTML is going to add a new dimension because we're going to do that using ChatGPT, which is a very useful tool. I use it on a daily basis as an assistant and a collaborator. ChatGPT does not replace you, and you cannot, ChatGPT won't magically do everything for you, but is an excellent collaborator and assistant. All right. So first thing is the JSON. In the same way that we did this conversion, we can do to JSON as well. So let's say CSV to JSON. Remembering JSON is JavaScript object notation. Okay, so let's use the same site that we used before because it was really good. It seems to work. So convert CSV to JSON. And it's not JSON like the name. It's not JASON, it's JSON, JSON. Okay, cool. So let's choose the file. We're going to upload the same file. We're going to upload the CSV that we worked with previously. So here it is. Here it is. That's the CSV. You can see it's got the little tiny A there. And you can actually look at, just make sure in the type. Let's expand that. Okay, Microsoft Excel, comma separated values file. That is what we want. Okay. Double click on that. That's my input. And here's my resulting data. Fantastic. It's labeled perfectly. You can see it's in JSON object format. And then let's download that file. Great. Okay, JSON file. Save. Okay, excellent. Let's check that in our Visual Studio. Okay, great. So there we've got our JSON file ready to work with. All right, now the last one is creating an HTML web page, right? And the reason we need an HTML web page for this specific project is that this is testing students on the ability to be able to get data in a Python program. So programmatically extract data from different source types. So the next step in this, which I'm not covering right now, this is just really about how to get the data in the first place. But you're going to, well, the next stage of the project is to be using Python code in order to open up each of those. So to open up the CSV file, extract the data, open up the XML file, extract the data, open the JSON file, extract the data. And then the fourth one is to scrape from an HTML, to scrape from a web page, essentially, from a website. So the one way we can do it is, and to maintain control of our environment, is to create our own web page with the same data on it. Okay, so that's why the need for an HTML page. Okay, so let me go to OpenAI, and I was just doing a bit of playing around here with that. Was with a large data set, but I'm going to open up a brand new tab here. And if you're on the premium, which I am, it's $20 a month, but it pays for itself over and over again. They've released ChatGPT 4.0. So as far as I understand from what I've read, 4.0 means Omni. Okay, so it's not 100% clear yet from this interface what Omni means, but what I have seen is that I was now able, for example, to upload a video file, and it was able to understand the video, right? So this is leaps and bounds now, the new functionality, but we don't need any of that for now. What we need is, I want to just create an HTML file. Okay, so let's say in a nice conversational way, let's create an HTML web page. Okay, so we want to create an HTML web page, and using attached data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload the data. Okay, so let's just upload it, and we can upload it in any format. Okay, that's interesting. All right, so I want from desktop, that's why. There we go. Okay, so just for fun, let's upload it in JSON format. Okay, so create an HTML web page using the attached data. This is a static web page. Static web page means I just wanted to hard code all the data into the web page. I don't want it to be running PHP or some other coding language in order to get it from a database or anything like that. We just want it displayed statically. Okay. And the reason for that is it's much easier just to run that page. It means we can just run it in our browser, which is really straightforward. Okay, so please create an HTML web page using the attached data. This is a static web page. All right, so let's see what it gives us. So what you can see it did there is it just gave us the first two examples, and then it said like add cards as needed. But ideally what I want is I just wanted to give me the whole page with all of the data in it. Because of the amount of data it can output in a request, you can see it's paused, but it's given me the option to continue generating. So it's just going to continue doing what it was doing. It's just going to pick up where it left off. Hopefully. Okay, so we have an issue with that. Yeah, great. That time it did continue, so let's hope it finishes this time. Let's see how far it goes. Wow, good. And it's continuing, it's all in the same code block, which is good. When it's finished, what we're going to do is we are then going to copy this code and paste it into our Visual Studio Code as a new HTML file. Great. Excellent. It did it. Okay. So this code, fantastic. Okay. That was excellent. All right. So what I'm going to do now is copy all of this code, and I'm going to paste it into a new HTML file. in our data folder. Okay, so use tv.html, and then just paste that, format it. All right, Control S. Okay, there we have it. That was the requirement. We initially downloaded a CSV file. We created, and then we imported that CSV into an Excel. We cleaned the data in Excel, and then we exported again a clean CSV file. Then we converted that CSV to JSON, and then we also converted the CSV to XML. And then what we did was using ChatGPT is to create an HTML file from the CSV or from the JSON. So another way of creating a web page, which is just a little bit messy, we can go to here, and this is so using Excel itself. File, let's see quickly, time. Okay. So file, save as. We can go to HTML web page. Yeah, let's try that. Okay, so this is our web page. It looks like it's separate. So this is what it's created. This is an HTML file. So let's see what, if I open it up in my browser. Okay, let's try Microsoft Edge. That it is a Microsoft product. Maybe it will be more friendly. Yeah, I mean, it kind of works, I guess. Let's see if we can inspect that. Okay. I mean, so this is workable as well. I mean, if you struggle with ChatGPT, we don't have premium version or whatever, this is an acceptable way to do it. So you'll just need to scrape using a Python scraping program or tool for that. But yeah, cool. Thanks very much, everyone. Junior, thank you for joining. Is there any questions that you have before we wrap up?
I wanted to oh, hello, by the way, sorry about
Hi, hi,
that.
hi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, with these webinars, do you record them and then like put them on a place for the recordings as well?
Yeah.
Unless, or do you just wait till they're requested or something?
No, we're going to put them up publicly. So it's a new format that we're trying. And the suggestion I've made to the colleagues is that we create a YouTube channel for
Okay.
really for these webinars. So that is most likely what we're going to do. Once I've published each webinar, then I will send out a message via eFront, which goes to email addresses as far as I know.
Yeah.
Just letting you know that a new video has been published, and I'll give you the link for that.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
But yeah, no, that was a great lesson. Thank you.
Excellent. I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah, it felt good. It was I enjoyed it as well. So definitely good information to have. Cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for joining, Junior. All right.
Yeah.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Bye.